It can be difficult to follow a plan in sports when it comes to rebuilding an organization. Because if you do it the right way, we're talking about a rebuild. If you do it the right way, it takes time. It takes patience. It takes a lot of effort. And it can be multiple seasons before that work, before that time, before that patience can pay off with the success of being in the postseason and having that franchise, that organization back on the national stage, competing for what everybody's goal is in sports, and that is to win a championship. It's a hard thing to do. It's hard to get the buy-in everywhere. Buy-in from ownership, buy-in from everybody on the business ops side of things. It's one of the things I don't think we talk enough about when teams go through a rebuild. You have a business side of all of these teams that have to sell season tickets, that have to sell the sponsorships, that have to sell the logos all across the stadium, the banners, all of it. Really tough to get everybody to buy into a vision of, hey, this is going to take some time and it may not look pretty, but when we get to the end of this rainbow, that pot of gold is going to be amazing for everybody. Well, the Cardinals a couple years ago, they went down this path of a rebuild. It was a completely clean slate. Something another team in this market, in this town, should probably take some advice from. They got rid of their GM, they got rid of their head coach, and it was time to start over. Monty Ossenfort was brought in to be the general manager, and a few weeks after that, a new coach was brought into the building in Jonathan Gannon. And that started the work. That started the clock on this rebuild process. And it was slow and steady work. Despite some of us maybe wanting them at times to speed it up, some of us at times wanting them to push the chips all in. I think last summer was a big example of this. They stayed true to their process. They slowly and steadily rebuilt this roster. They gave themselves a year to evaluate, to see who on the roster fit in with their identity, fit in with their vision they wanted to build around long term, and who didn't. And then they spent their first offseason, after their first season on the field, retooling this roster. And then we saw what we saw last year, which was this blueprint starting to morph, this blueprint starting to trend upward. You get in there, you keep the guys you want to build around. You keep the guys that fit your culture, your identity. You get rid of the guys who don't. You bring in more guys in free agency, in the draft that fit that identity, and then you start to build on that success. And that is exactly what they did last season, doubling their win total from a year ago. And we were upset with how it ended. We were upset with the way that they finished last season, and it left us with a whole bunch of questions that needed to be answered. But they doubled their win total from a year ago. They took the smart, calculated approach to slowly and steadily build. They never panicked. They never wanted to accelerate, put their foot on the gas pedal earlier than they were comfortable. Despite people like me who sit in front of microphones, maybe at times nudging them a little bit, wanting them to do more, wanting them to be aggressive at the trade deadline last year. I'll raise my hand. We spent a lot of airtime during the season around the trade deadline wondering where the big splash was. You had a team that was 6-4, make that big splash, reward the team that's on the field. They chose not to go that direction. And so the next stage of this blueprint, because they followed it to a T, this is exactly what you do. You get in there, you clean up the mess from the last place, you then start to make it look like the way you want it to look. And then around year 3, year 4 is when the success is supposed to be there. And so if we are following that blueprint, then the expectations on the Cardinals this year have to be at a bare minimum a playoff appearance. We gave you the slow and steady approach. At times we got a little worried about it. At times we got a little anxious. We got a little excited. We wanted to just get on with this. But okay. You had a slow and steady approach to trying to build. You had 2 years to recraft this roster in your vision. You've had now 3 off seasons. And in this offseason, the third year where everybody expects things to actually turn and for the results to be there, you've poured gasoline, I think correctly, onto that fire by signing Josh Sweat, by signing Dalvin Tomlinson, by signing Calais Campbell, by drafting Walter Nolan, by drafting Will Johnson, by investing heavily on defense, the area of the ball, or the side of the ball, the big area of concern for this team that played a somewhat large part in you not making the playoffs last year. That's what you decided to do. You've now pushed all in. You've done so at the right time. You've done so on your timeline, not everybody else's timeline, the way you wanted this to go. That means there are no more built-in excuses. There are no more, just wait for X, Y, or Z, or just wait for this to happen or us to make this move. You've been given 3 off seasons. You've been given 3 draft classes, 3 free agency periods to build this roster the way you want it to look. It is go time now. I want to give credit to them for being patient and trusting their process and blocking out all of the outside noise. But that process has led us to this point. And this point is you have to make the playoffs this season. I won't go as far as others. This is something I've seen a lot anytime we talk about the Cardinals, especially on the KDUSA M1060 YouTube live chat. It comes up quite a bit that they have to win a playoff game. I got to see what that looks like. Who do they match up against? Is it a favorable matchup for them? Is it a home playoff game? Are they traveling on the road to a tough environment? There's way too many there's a context to that playoff game that I think matters. So for me, it's you got to have a seat at the table. You have to be playing on that first weekend. And if you play a close competitive playoff game and you lose on the road, I don't know how mad we're all going to be because it is still going to be a sign of progress. But if you only win 8 games or only win 9 games and you miss out on the playoffs, or maybe you win less than 8 or 9 games. If you miss the playoffs, I think it's going to force us to ask a lot of questions about the quarterback, and I think we all know where that's going to lead to. I think while it won't directly result to it this offseason, it would wonder if the coach is on the hot seat entering year 4 with no playoff berths. This is the year. Because if it doesn't happen this year, you are then going to start all the way back at the beginning of this process because you are probably going to be looking for a new quarterback. And that is the hardest thing to find in sports. It is the hardest thing to find in football. The franchise quarterback that can lead you and take you to the postseason. So it is a goal that we have not seen this team reach over the last couple of years. But with the way that they've slowly and steadily built, I think it is incredibly fair to set the bar as high as this team has to make the playoffs in 2025.
You know, when Kingsbury got fired, they went 4-13 in 2022. And you talked about the patience and the slow steps forwards. That next year, they went 4-13 again, that first Gannon year. But they also lost in point differential, and you realize they were more into a rebuild than they were the previous year.
And you go 4-13, you make the coaching change, you make the GM change. Everybody is okay with you having a year to just get acclimated. It's a coordinator coming over, getting a head coaching role for the first time. It's a guy in the GM chair who was an assistant GM someplace else. They have to learn these roles. They have to learn the roster. Everybody, I don't want to call it a mulligan year or a redshirt year, but they were given the freedom to just let that first year play out and evaluate. That's fine. Great. No complaints. Last year, you double your win total. Great. Some complaints towards the end of the season with the way things finished, but overall, arrow trending upwards. The arrow has to continue to trend upwards this season, and it has to end with you playing a playoff game. Has to. Because that then is the validation that this slow and steady approach was worth it. That the way you've chosen to go about this rebuild is the right way to do things. I am in favor of the way they've handled this. I've at times gotten a little anxious and have wanted them to do a little bit more. I'm guilty of it. I wanted them to try to make a big splash for a wide receiver this offseason. I wanted them during the year last year to make a big splash and trade for somebody like Trey Hendrickson and make a big upgrade to the defense to try to reward a 6-4 team at the time. I get it. I get a little anxious because you're 10 weeks into an NFL season and the team's 6-4, beating expectations. Let's see where this ends up. Let's see what happens here. I got a little excited. I got a little ahead of my skis. There is no getting excited or more excited or getting ahead of your skis about this team this season. This is the most talented roster that Monty has put together in his 3 years. It is the most talented roster that JG is going to coach. It is the most talented roster on both sides of the ball for Kyler Murray in a really long time. That has to come with playoff results. There are no excuses anymore. None. So they've done all of the right things up until this point. And so because they have taken the slow and steady approach, we enter year 3 and it's okay. We've been patient. We gave you the time. We gave you the space to recraft this roster. Now you've got to reward us. Now you've got to go out there and play quality football on the field to where in November and December, there's meaningful football games and that in January, the Cardinals are still playing. That's it. That is the bar that has been set with what this team has done this offseason and where they're at in this process.